Victor Kane, the name that once made grown men tremble, now sits motionless in a wheelchair, broken and powerless. His enemies whisper that the king is dead, his throne already carved up among vultures. But tonight, everything changes. Lena Carter stands before him, sold like livestock to pay her father's debts, expecting nothing but survival in a loveless marriage to a cripple. She doesn't know the truth yet. The man in that wheelchair isn't broken at all. He's been watching, waiting. And the game he's playing will burn everyone who ever betrayed him. If you're ready for a story of revenge, power, and a queen who rose from the ashes, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. Done. The warehouse smelled of motor oil and desperation. Lena Carter stood in the center of the concrete floor, her father's trembling hand gripping her shoulder like she was the last thing keeping him upright. Around them, men in expensive suits formed a semicircle, jackals in Italian leather, watching the transaction with cold amusement. She's young, strong, pretty enough. The man speaking wore rings on every finger, each one probably worth more than Lena's entire life. He circled her slowly, appraising. Victor might actually keep this one alive longer than a month. Her father flinched. Lena didn't. She'd stopped flinching 3 years ago, the night she came home to find her mother gone and her brother Marcus vanished without a trace. The night her father's gambling debt had grown from a problem into a death sentence. She'd learned then that fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. The debt, her father croaked. Thomas, you said if I brought her $300,000. Thomas, the ring-wearing vulture, cut him off with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That's what you owe, Jimmy, and that's what she's worth, to us anyway. To Victor Kane? He laughed. Well, he's not exactly in a position to be picky anymore, is he? The other men joined in the laughter. It echoed off the warehouse walls, harsh and mocking. Lena's jaw tightened. She'd heard the stories about Victor Kane. Everyone in Queens had. The crime lord who'd controlled the East Coast with an iron fist, who'd built an empire on fear and loyalty in equal measure. And then, 3 years ago, everything changed. An assassination attempt left him paralyzed, confined to a wheelchair. His empire fractured. His enemies grew bold. Now apparently those same enemies were selling him a bride like she was a piece of furniture. Does she speak? Another man stepped forward, younger than the others, with cruel eyes. Or did you cut out her tongue to make her more manageable? I speak. Lena met his gaze without blinking. I also remember faces. The warehouse went quiet. Thomas laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. She's got spirit. Victor always did like a challenge. Shame he can't do much about it anymore. He turned to her father. The car's outside. She goes tonight. Your debt dies with the marriage. You walk away clean, Jimmy. Try not to gamble it all away again before the year's out. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. Lena, I don't. She shrugged off his hand. You made your choice. I'm making mine. Your choice? The young man with cruel eyes laughed. You don't have a choice, sweetheart. You're property now. Victor Kane's property. A crippled old man's last consolation prize. Lena turned to face him fully. She was 23 years old, 5'6" in her worn sneakers, with exactly $47 in her pocket and nothing left to lose. We'll see who ends up being property. The ride to the Kane mansion took 40 minutes through streets Lena had never seen before. The city changed as they drove, from the cramped, graffitied blocks of Queens to tree-lined avenues where houses had gates and security cameras, and enough space between them that you couldn't hear your neighbors breathe. The man driving didn't speak. Neither did the guard in the passenger seat. They'd zip-tied her hands in the warehouse. Procedure, Thomas had called it, but they hadn't blindfolded her. Either they were confident she'd never escape, or they wanted her to see exactly how far from home she was going. Both, probably. The mansion appeared through the trees like something from a different world. 3 stories of stone and glass, surrounded by walls that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. The gates opened automatically as they approached, closing behind them with a finality that made her stomach clench. The guards cut the zip ties and pulled her from the car without ceremony. Her sneakers crunched on gravel that had probably been imported from somewhere with a name she couldn't pronounce. Ahead, the mansion's front doors opened, and a woman emerged. She was in her 50s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a black dress that screamed competence. Lena Carter? That's me. I'm Margaret. I manage the household. The woman's gaze swept over her, taking in the faded jeans, the secondhand jacket, the complete absence of luggage. You'll need appropriate clothing for the ceremony. It's tonight. Tonight? Lena's eyebrows rose. Romantic. Margaret's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or pity. Mr. Kane prefers not to delay. Follow me. The mansion's interior was exactly what Lena expected. All marble floors and crystal chandeliers, and the kind of silence that money bought. Her footsteps echoed as Margaret led her through hallways lined with paintings that probably had insurance policies worth more than human lives. The ceremony will be in the East Wing, Margaret said, her voice echoing. Justice of the peace, witnesses, legal and binding. Afterward, you'll be escorted to the master suite. To meet my husband. Yes. The cripple. Margaret stopped walking. She turned slowly, and for the first time, her professional mask slipped. Victor Kane is many things, Miss Carter. I'd suggest you remember that before you make assumptions about what he is or isn't capable of. There was something in her tone, a warning, maybe, or a test. Lena filed it away. They climbed stairs to the second floor, then down another hallway to a room that was probably meant to be a guest suite but looked more like a high-end hotel. Margaret gestured to the closet. You'll find appropriate options. Someone will collect you in 2 hours. What if I'm not ready in 2 hours? Then you'll be collected anyway. Margaret moved toward the door, then paused. Miss Carter, a word of advice. Victor Kane built an empire by knowing exactly who to trust and who to destroy. The fact that you're here, alive and unmarried to some accountant in Jersey, means someone still considers you valuable. I'd think carefully about why that might be. The door closed with a soft click. Lena stood alone in the silent room, her reflection staring back from a full-length mirror. She looked small in the expensive space. Young, afraid. She hated it. The closet held a dozen dresses, all in her size, which meant someone had been planning this, measuring her, preparing. The thought made her skin crawl. She chose the simplest option, a white dress that was probably meant to be ironic, fitted enough to look deliberate, but not so tight she couldn't move if she needed to run. Not that running would help. She was miles from anything familiar, surrounded by people who'd bought her like merchandise. But Margaret's words stuck with her. Someone still considers you valuable. Why? Lena sat on the edge of the bed, a bed that probably cost more than a year's rent, and thought about her father's face in the warehouse. The relief when Thomas said the debt would die with the marriage. The way he hadn't even tried to fight for her. She thought about Marcus, her little brother, who disappeared 3 years ago without a trace. The police had shrugged. People vanished in Queens every day, especially people who couldn't afford to be found. She thought about her mother, who'd walked out 6 months before Marcus disappeared, leaving nothing but a note that said, "I'm sorry," and lipstick on the bathroom mirror. And she thought about the next 3 hours, or 3 days, or 3 years, however long she survived, in this marble tomb, as Victor Kane's unwanted bride. The door opened at exactly 2 hours. Margaret stood in this hallway with 2 other women, both dressed in black. It's time. The ceremony took place in what Margaret called the library, but looked more like a cathedral made of books. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, leather spines, worth fortunes, and in the center, a small cleared space with the justice of the peace waiting. And Victor Kane. Lena had built an image in her mind. A broken man, hunched and bitter, probably gray-haired and ancient, clinging to power through fear even as his body failed him. The reality was different. Victor Kane sat in his wheelchair near the window, backlit by the evening sun streaming through stained glass. He wasn't ancient, maybe 40, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples. His face was hard angles and old scars, the kind earned through violence rather than age. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than a car, and his hands rested motionless on the wheelchair's armrests. But his eyes were alert and calculating, tracking Lena's approach with an intensity that made her breath catch. These weren't the eyes of a broken man. These were Predator's eyes. "Miss Carter!" His voice was rough velvet, the kind of voice that commanded rooms. Thank you for being punctual. Did I have a choice? No, a slight smile. But I appreciate the courtesy regardless. The justice of the peace cleared his throat nervously. Shall we begin? The ceremony was brief and brutal in its efficiency. No vows beyond the legal minimum, no rings, just contracts and signatures and witnesses who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Lena signed her name on documents she didn't bother reading. What was the point? Her signature or her corpse, Thomas and his vultures would get what they wanted either way. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, the justice of the peace intoned, I now pronounce you husband and wife. No kiss. No celebration. Just Margaret's quiet voice. The guests will see you in the ballroom for the reception. Reception? Lena stared at Victor. You're joking. I don't joke, Mrs. Kane. He said her new name like he was testing how it sounded. Appearances matter. Our marriage needs to be seen as legitimate. It's not legitimate. It's a transaction. All marriages are transactions. Victor's wheelchair turned smoothly. Too smoothly, Lena noticed, like the man controlling it had done this 1,000 times. The only difference is what's being traded. Shall we? The ballroom was worse than the ceremony. 50 people, maybe more, all dressed in evening wear that cost more than Lena's entire life. They applauded when she and Victor entered, but the sound was cold, mocking. She could see it in their faces, the barely concealed contempt, the amusement at seeing the great Victor Kane reduced to this, a cripple marrying a girl from Queens to maintain the illusion of power. Smile, Victor murmured as they moved through the crowd. You're supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be a lot of things. A man stepped forward, tall and silver-haired, with a smile that reminded Lena of broken glass. Victor, congratulations on your acquisition. Robert. Victor's voice didn't change, but something in the air shifted. Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it. Robert's eyes slid to Lena. She's younger than the last one. Prettier, too. Let's hope she lasts longer. Lena felt Victor's hand, his supposedly paralyzed hand, brush against hers in what might have been warning or reassurance. I'm sure she will, Victor said softly. Lena is full of surprises. The reception dragged on for hours. Lena stood at Victor's side, shaking hands with people whose names she immediately forgot, listening to conversations that danced around the obvious. Victor Kane was finished. His empire was dying. This marriage was a desperate attempt to appear strong, but Lena kept watching, and the more she watched, the more things didn't add up. Victor's supposed paralysis, for instance. The doctors had said complete loss of function below the waist, but she'd seen his hand move, seen the way he shifted his weight in the wheelchair with too much control, seen the micro-expressions on his face when certain names were mentioned, Robert's especially. Mrs. Kane. A woman approached mid-30s, beautiful in the way that money bought. I'm Catherine, Robert's wife. I just wanted to say, you look lovely tonight. Thank you. It must be difficult. Catherine's smile was syrup over poison. Marrying a man who can't, well, you know. Lena met her eyes. Can't what? Stand up for himself. Catherine's smile widened. In any sense of the phrase. Around them, conversations stopped. People turned to watch, waiting for the bride to crack, to cry, to run. Lena smiled back. Funny. From where I'm standing, your husband can't seem to stand up to anyone either, but at least Victor has an excuse. The ballroom went silent. Catherine's face flushed red. Robert started forward, but Victor's voice cut through the tension like a blade. I think my wife is tired. Margaret, please escort Mrs. Kane to the master's suite. Of course, sir. As Margaret led her away, Lena heard the whispers starting, the speculation, the judgment. She'd made an enemy tonight, probably several. But she'd also done something else. She'd shown Victor Kane that she wasn't going to play the victim. The master suite was larger than Lena's entire apartment had been. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens, and a bed that could sleep 4 people comfortably. It was beautiful and sterile and completely terrifying. Margaret gestured to a door on the left. Your dressing room and bathroom. You'll find everything you need. She paused. Mr. Kane will join you shortly. To consummate the marriage? Lena kept her voice flat. To speak with you. Margaret's expression softened slightly. He's not a monster, Mrs. Kane. Whatever you've heard. Everyone's heard what happened 3 years ago. Yes, they have. Margaret moved toward the door. But very few people know the whole truth. I'd suggest you listen when Mr. Kane offers to tell it. Then she was gone, and Lena was alone. She explored the suite because staying still felt like drowning. The dressing room held clothes in her size, more planning, more preparation. The bathroom had marble everything, and a shower that could fit 6 people. The windows were bulletproof glass. The doors had locks that probably wouldn't stop anyone determined to get in. She was examining the bookshelves, first editions, leather-bound, the kind of collection that took decades to build, when she heard the door open. Victor Kane entered in his wheelchair, moving with that same too-smooth control. The door closed behind him with a soft click. They stared at each other across the expensive carpet. You surprised me tonight, Victor said finally. Catherine has been trying to provoke me for 2 years. You managed it in 30 seconds. Should I apologize? No. He moved closer, and Lena forced herself not to step back. You should never apologize for defending yourself, or for speaking truth. The truth is I'm trapped here. Yes. The truth is you bought me to erase my father's debt. No. Victor's eyes locked onto hers. Thomas and Robert bought you. They brought you here thinking you'd be another humiliation for me, another reminder of how far I've fallen. His smile was sharp enough to cut. They have no idea what they've actually done. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. What does that mean? Victor reached down to the wheelchair's armrest. There was a soft click, and then he stood up. Lena stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat. Victor Kane rose from the wheelchair in one smooth motion, 6 feet of controlled power, his legs working perfectly as he took a step forward. Then another. The assassination attempt 3 years ago, he said quietly, was real. The injuries were real. But the paralysis? He smiled, and it was the coldest thing Lena had ever seen. That was theater. You've been faking it. Her voice came out as a whisper. For 3 years. For 3 years, I've watched my empire tear itself apart. I've listened to men I trusted plot against me. I've seen every snake, every traitor, every opportunist reveal themselves because they thought I was helpless. Victor took another step closer, and Lena could see the scars on his neck now, the evidence of how close he'd come to dying. They stopped being careful, stopped hiding, and now I know exactly who needs to die. Lena's back hit the bookshelf. Why are you telling me this? Because, Mrs. Kane, you have a choice to make. Victor stopped just out of arm's reach. I can give you money, enough to disappear, start over, never worry about your father's debt again. You walk out that door tonight, and you're free. Or you stay. You play the role of my broken bride. You watch. You listen. You help me identify every last traitor in my organization. His eyes burned with cold fire. And when it's done, when I've taken back everything they stole from me, I'll help you find what you're looking for. Lena's breath stopped. What? Marcus Carter, your brother, age 17 when he disappeared 3 years ago from Queens. Victor's smile turned knowing. Did you think I didn't do research? Did you think I didn't wonder why a girl like you would walk into this marriage without a fight? You know where he is. I know where to start looking. Victor leaned against the desk, casual and terrifying. The same people who tried to kill me have been running kidnapping operations, human trafficking, protection rackets. Your brother disappeared the same month I was shot. That's not a coincidence. Lena's hands were shaking. If you know where he is, why haven't you? Because I've been trapped in this chair playing dead while my enemies carved up my empire. Victor's voice hardened. But that ends now, so choose, Lena. Freedom and money, or partnership and answers. She should run. Every survival instinct screamed at her to take the money and disappear before this man's war consumed her too. But Marcus's face swam in her memory. Her baby brother, who'd covered for her when she broke curfew. Who'd shared his lunch money when she forgot hers. who'd vanished without a trace, leaving her with nothing but questions and guilt that ate her alive. I stay. The words came out stronger than she felt. But I want more than just information. When you find Marcus, I want him protected. I want him safe. Done. And I want leverage. Lena straightened her spine. You're asking me to be your spy, your secret weapon. If I'm taking that risk, I want insurance that you won't just dispose of me when I'm no longer useful. Victor studied her for a long moment. Then he moved to the desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a file folder. Everything in here is enough to destroy me. Bank accounts, safe houses, evidence of crimes that would put me away for life. He held it out. Keep it hidden. If I betray you, you take this to the federal prosecutor whose name is on the first page. He's been trying to bring me down for a decade. This would be his Christmas present. Lena took the folder with trembling hands. You're serious? I'm betting my life that you're smarter than the people who think you're just another transaction. Victor returned to the wheelchair, settling into it with practiced ease. The act continues tomorrow. To everyone watching, I'm still the broken king and you're the sold bride. But between us? His eyes met hers. We're partners, and together we're going to burn every traitor to the ground. Lena clutched the folder against her chest, her mind racing. She'd walked into this mansion expecting to survive. Now she was being offered something far more dangerous: revenge, answers, and an alliance with a man who'd spent 3 years pretending to be powerless while plotting the downfall of everyone who'd betrayed him. When do we start? She asked. Victor's smile was sharp and satisfied. We already have. He wheeled himself toward the door, then paused. The bed is yours. I have rooms downstairs. Tomorrow, we'll begin your education on exactly who's been stealing from me. He glanced back. Sleep well, Mrs. Kane. You're going to need it. The door closed behind him, and Lena was alone in the massive suite with a folder full of secrets and a partnership she didn't fully understand yet. She moved to the window, looking out at the gardens below. Somewhere in this city, Marcus might still be alive. And Victor Kane, the man everyone thought was finished, had just revealed he'd been playing the longest game of all. Lena opened the folder, scanning the first page. Bank accounts in the Caymans, property deeds and false names, photographs of Victor meeting with people who were supposed to be his enemies. It was a suicide note in paper form, everything she'd need to destroy him, which meant he was either genuinely trusting her or this was an even deeper game than she'd realized. Lena closed the folder and hid it in the back of the closet, behind designer dresses she'd never wanted. Then she lay down on the enormous bed, still fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Her wedding night, alone, plotting revenge with a man who'd faked paralysis for 3 years. She should be terrified. Instead, for the first time since Marcus disappeared, Lena Carter felt something else entirely. Hope. And in the morning, the real work would begin. Morning came too early, announced by Margaret's quiet knock at 6:30. Lena had barely slept, her mind churning through everything Victor had revealed. Every time she'd started to drift off, she'd jolt awake, remembering the way he'd stood up from that wheelchair, the coldness in his eyes when he'd talked about the people who'd betrayed him. Mrs. Kane. Margaret's voice filtered through the door. Mr. Kane requests your presence for breakfast in 30 minutes. Lena dragged herself from the bed, her clothes wrinkled from sleeping in them. The girl staring back from the bathroom mirror looked exhausted and lost. She needed to fix that. If she was going to be Victor's secret weapon, she couldn't look like a victim. She showered quickly, letting the scalding water wash away the fog in her brain. The closet held dozens of options, all expensive, all chosen by someone who'd studied her measurements like she was a mannequin. She picked black pants and a dark green blouse. Simple, professional, forgettable. The kind of outfit that would let her fade into the background while she watched and learned. Margaret was waiting in the hallway, her expression unreadable. This way. The breakfast room was smaller than Lena expected, tucked into the east wing with windows overlooking a garden that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. Victor sat at the head of the table in his wheelchair. Reading a newspaper like this was any normal morning. Like he hadn't revealed last night that his entire disability was an elaborate lie. Good morning, Mrs. Kane. He didn't look up from the paper. Coffee? Please? Margaret poured from a silver pot, the kind that probably had a pedigree. Lena accepted the cup and sat down across from Victor, her back straight, her face carefully neutral. Victor folded the newspaper and set it aside. How did you sleep? Like someone who just learned her husband has been running a 3-year con on everyone who wants him dead. A slight smile. That's fair. He gestured to Margaret, who placed a file folder in front of Lena. Your education begins now. Open it. The folder contained photographs, dozens of them. Men in expensive suits, women dripping with jewelry, groups gathered at what looked like business meetings or social events. Each photo had names written on the back in precise handwriting. These are the people in my organization, Victor said, or what's left of it. Study their faces. Learn their names. By the end of this week, you'll be able to identify every person in this folder on sight. Lena flipped through the images. Why? Because you're going to be my eyes and ears in places I can't reach. Victor accepted a cup of coffee from Margaret. A paralyzed man in a wheelchair. People ignore him, talk around him. But his young wife? His eyes locked onto hers. You'll be at parties, charity events, meetings. You'll hear things, see things, and you'll report back to me. So I'm a spy. You're an observer. Victor pulled out another folder. This is different. This is your priority. The second folder held fewer photos, but Lena's breath caught when she saw the first one. A man in his 50s, silver-haired, with the same broken glass smile she'd seen last night. Robert Castellano, Victor said. He was my second in command before the assassination attempt. Now he runs the Northern Territories and thinks he's untouchable. The man from last night, with the wife who called me. Catherine, yes. She's exactly as poisonous as she seems. Victor flipped to the next photo. Thomas Marino. He brought you to me. He runs the Southside operations, or he did until he started skimming 20% off the top and thinking I wouldn't notice. Lena remembered Thomas's rings, his mocking laughter in the warehouse. He's the one who handled my father's debt and used it as an opportunity to humiliate me. Victor's voice remained calm, but his eyes were ice. He'll pay for that. They all will. The next photos showed more faces, more names. Victor walked her through each one, explaining their positions, their betrayals, the evidence he'd gathered while pretending to be helpless. It was meticulous and brutal and completely focused. How did you do it? Lena asked. 3 years of pretending, never breaking character. Discipline. Victor closed the folder. And rage. When you're angry enough, when you want revenge badly enough, you can endure anything. He studied her. You understand that, don't you? Lena thought about Marcus. About 3 years of searching, of dead ends and unanswered questions. About the cold fury that lived in her chest every time she thought about the people who'd taken him. Yes, she said quietly. I understand. Good. Victor wheeled himself back from the table. Tonight, there's a charity gala. We'll be attending. You'll meet most of these people face to face. Your job is simple. Be charming, be forgettable, and listen. What am I listening for? Anything that doesn't fit. These people have been dividing up my empire for 3 years. They're confident now. Sloppy, they'll talk. Victor's smile was knife-sharp. And you'll remember every word. The rest of the morning was a crash course in faces and names. Margaret brought lunch to the study while Lena memorized details. Robert Castellano had a tell. He touched his left cufflink when he lied. Thomas Marino always stood with his back to the wall. Catherine Castellano collected information like some women collected shoes, always fishing for gossip she could weaponize later. She'll try to befriend you, Victor warned. Make you feel included, like you're part of some secret club. Don't trust it. I don't trust anything. Smart. Victor pulled out another file. But there are people you can trust, or at least people who haven't betrayed me yet. He showed her photos of the household staff. Margaret, who'd been with him for 15 years. James, the head of security, who'd taken a bullet during the assassination attempt and still wore the scar. Lena, the chef, who'd refused offers from Robert to come work for him instead. These people are loyal, Victor said. They know the truth about my condition. They've been helping me maintain the illusion. Lena studied Margaret's photo. She tried to warn me last night about making assumptions. Margaret sees more than most people. Victor closed the file. She also knows that if you'd run last night, if you'd taken the money, I wouldn't have stopped you. The fact that you stayed tells her something important. What's that? That you're not just a victim. Victor's eyes met hers. That you're willing to fight. The afternoon brought different lessons. Victor had Lena practice walking into rooms, reading the dynamics, identifying who held power and who was desperate for it. He taught her how to fade into conversations, how to ask questions that seemed innocent but revealed everything, how to remember details without taking notes. People will underestimate you, he said. You're young, you're beautiful, you're new, money married to old power. They'll assume you're decoration. Let them. Exactly. Victor smiled. It's the same reason I stayed in this chair. When people think you're powerless, they show you who they really are. By 5 o'clock, Lena's head was spinning with information. Names and faces blurred together. She could identify Robert and Thomas on site now, along with a dozen others. But the rest were still a jumble of expensive suits and calculating smiles. It'll come, Victor assured her. Give it time. Tonight, just observe. Don't try to gather intelligence yet. Just watch how they move, how they interact. Learn the ecosystem. Margaret appeared in the doorway. Sir, the car will be ready in 2 hours. Thank you. Victor turned to Lena. Go get ready. There's a dress in your closet. Dark blue. Wear that. Lena raised an eyebrow. You picked out my dress? I picked out a dress that won't make you a target. Victor's expression was serious. These people are vultures. They'll tear apart anyone who looks weak or overdressed or desperate for attention. The blue dress is elegant but understated. It says you belong without begging for validation. You've thought about this. I've been planning this for 3 years. Victor met her eyes. Every detail matters, including what my wife wears to her first public appearance as Mrs. Kane. The dress was exactly where he'd said it would be, hanging alone in the closet like it had been waiting for this moment. Lena touched the fabric, silk that probably cost more than a month's rent. It was beautiful in an understated way, the kind of beauty that whispered instead of shouting. She put it on and studied herself in the mirror. The woman looking back didn't look like Lena Carter from Queens anymore. She looked polished, dangerous, like someone who could walk into a room full of criminals and hold her own. The transformation was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Margaret knocked and entered without waiting for permission. Let me help with your hair. Lena sat at the vanity while Margaret worked, pinning and styling until Lena's dark hair was swept up in something elegant and controlled. Margaret's hands were gentle but efficient, like everything else about her. You did well today, Margaret said quietly. Learning all those names, most people would need a week. Most people aren't looking for their missing brother. Margaret's hands paused for just a second. Mr. Kane told you about Marcus. He said the people who tried to kill him might know where Marcus is. Lena met Margaret's eyes in the mirror. Do you believe him? I believe Mr. Kane always tells the truth about the things that matter. Margaret resumed working on Lena's hair. And I believe he wouldn't have married you if he didn't think you could help him get his empire back. So I'm useful. You're more than that. Margaret's expression softened. You stood up to Catherine last night. Do you know how many people are too afraid to do that? I had nothing to lose. No. Margaret secured the last pin. You had everything to lose. But you chose dignity over safety. That matters. She stepped back. There. You look perfect. Lena stared at her reflection. The stranger in the mirror looked confident and composed, like someone who could survive in Victor Kane's world. She just hoped the illusion held. Victor was waiting in the entrance hall when Lena descended the stairs. He sat in his wheelchair, dressed in a black tuxedo that probably cost more than a car. His eyes tracked her approach with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. You look appropriate, he said. High praise. A slight smile. I don't give false compliments. You look like you belong. That's what matters tonight. He gestured to James, who stood by the door. Ready? The drive to the Gala took 30 minutes through Manhattan streets glittering with evening lights. Lena sat in the back of the town car next to Victor's wheelchair, watching the city blur past. She'd grown up in these streets, but from the inside of this car, they looked different, distant, like she was watching someone else's life through bulletproof glass. Nervous? Victor asked. Should I be? Probably. He didn't look at her, his attention on the window. These people are predators. They'll test you, push boundaries, try to find weaknesses they can exploit later. So what do I do? Remember that you know something they don't. Victor's eyes cut to her. You know I'm not actually broken. You know I've been watching them, collecting evidence, planning their destruction. That knowledge is power. Use it. The gala was being held at the Sinclair Hotel, a landmark building in Midtown that screamed old money and older secrets. Photographers lined the entrance, their cameras flashing as guests arrived in expensive cars. Lena watched women in designer gowns glide past, men in tuxedos that cost more than her father's annual salary. Smile, Victor murmured as their car pulled up. You're attending your first society event as my wife. Look happy about it. Lena forced her lips into something resembling a smile as James opened the door. The wheelchair came out first, then Victor settled into it with practiced ease. Lena stepped out after him, and immediately the camera swiveled toward them. Mrs. Kane, over here. Victor, how does it feel to be out in public? Mrs. Kane, is it true you met through family connections? Victor ignored them all, his face a polite mask as James wheeled him toward the entrance. Lena walked beside him, her hand resting lightly on the wheelchair's handle, like Margaret had coached her. The gesture looked supportive, dutiful. Exactly what a new wife should do. Inside, the ballroom was a showcase of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers caught the light from 1,000 angles. String quartet music floated through air, perfumed with expensive cologne and desperation. And everywhere Lena looked, she saw faces from the folders Victor had shown her. Robert Castellano stood near the bar, holding court with 3 other men. Thomas Marino laughed too loudly at something a woman in red had said. Catherine Castellano glided through the crowd like a shark, her smile sharp and hungry. There. Victor's voice was quiet enough that only Lena could hear. By the windows. The man in the gray suit. Lena followed his gaze. The man looked ordinary, mid-40s, receding hairline, forgettable in every way except for the careful attention he paid to everyone around him. Daniel Shaw, Victor continued. He ran my financial operations. After the assassination attempt, he started redirecting funds to offshore accounts. Small amounts at first, then larger. He's stolen approximately $12 million over 3 years. And you've been letting him. I've been documenting every transaction. Victor's smile was cold. When the time comes, Daniel Shaw will spend the rest of his life in a federal prison. But tonight, you're going to talk to him. Lena's stomach clenched. Why? Because he's been asking questions about you, where you came from, who your family is, whether you're a threat. Victor's eyes met hers. I want you to reassure him that you're not. Be sweet, be naive. Make him think you're just a pretty face who got lucky. And then listen, Daniel's nervous about something. I want to know what it is. Before Lena could respond, a voice cut through the ambient noise. Victor, my dear friend! Robert Castellano approached with his arms spread wide, his smile gleaming with false warmth. Catherine followed half a step behind, her eyes already cataloging every detail of Lena's appearance. Robert? Victor's tone was polite and empty. Catherine, thank you for coming. We wouldn't miss it. Robert's gaze slid to Lena. And this must be your lovely bride. We met briefly last night, but I don't think we were properly introduced. Robert Castellano. I've known your husband for 20 years. Lena offered her hand. Lena Kane. It's nice to meet you properly. Robert's handshake lasted a fraction too long. Victor always did have exquisite taste, even if his circumstances have changed. The emphasis was deliberate, cruel. My circumstances, Victor said quietly, are exactly as they should be. Of course. Robert's smile widened. I only meant that marriage suits you. Domestic life, it's a different kind of power, isn't it? The power of acceptance. Catherine laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Robert, you're terrible. Let the poor man enjoy his evening. She turned to Lena. You must let me show you around, dear. Introduce you to everyone. I remember how overwhelming these events can be for newcomers. That's kind of you, Lena said carefully. But I wouldn't want to impose. It's no imposition at all. Catherine linked her arm through Lena's before she could pull away. Victor, you don't mind if I steal your wife for a few minutes, do you? I promise to return her in one piece. Victor's eyes met Lena's. A warning. A test. Of course not. Enjoy yourselves. Catherine pulled Lena away before she could protest, navigating through the crowd with the confidence of someone who'd spent a lifetime in rooms like this. People moved aside automatically, their smiles sliding into place as Catherine approached. You handled yourself well last night, Catherine said once they were out of earshot. That comment about Robert. It was brave. Stupid, but brave. I wasn't trying to be brave. No, you were trying to survive. Catherine's grip on Lena's arm tightened slightly. I understand that impulse. We're not so different, you and I. I think we're very different, Catherine laughed. Oh, you're going to be fun. Come. There's someone you need to meet. She steered Lena toward the windows where Daniel Shaw stood nursing a drink and watching the crowd with careful attention. Up close, he looked even more forgettable, the kind of man you'd pass on the street and never remember. Daniel, Catherine purred, I want you to meet Victor's new wife. Lena, this is Daniel Shaw. He handles the financial side of things. Daniel's handshake was soft and brief. Mrs. Kane, welcome to the family. Thank you. Lena channeled every lesson Victor had taught her that afternoon. Sweet, naive, harmless. This is all so overwhelming. I had no idea Victor's world was this elaborate. It can be a lot to adjust to, Daniel agreed. His eyes studied her with an intensity that didn't match his mild tone. How are you finding the transition? It's different from what I'm used to. Lena let a little nervousness creep into her voice. I grew up in Queens. This is not Queens. Catherine laughed. I'm sure Victor is taking good care of you, even if he's somewhat limited in what he can provide. The innuendo was obvious and crude. Lena felt heat rise in her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from anger. She forced it down. Victor has been very generous. I'm sure. Daniel's attention sharpened. What did you do before the marriage, if you don't mind me asking? Waitressing, mostly, some retail. Lena shrugged. Nothing glamorous. My father owed money to some people, and Victor, he helped resolve the situation. She watched Daniel's face carefully. Victor had taught her to look for micro-expressions, the tiny tells that revealed what people were really thinking. Daniel's eyes widened fractionally, surprise maybe, or concern. Your father had gambling debts, Daniel said slowly, with Thomas Marino's operation. Yes. Lena dropped her gaze. It's not something I'm proud of, but Victor was kind enough to help. The marriage was, well, it solved everyone's problems. How practical. Catherine's smile was venomous. And here I thought romance was dead. Daniel wasn't smiling anymore. Does Victor discuss business with you, Mrs. Kane? No. Lena met his eyes with carefully crafted innocence. He says I don't need to worry about those things. I'm just supposed to look pretty and stay out of the way. Smart advice, Daniel murmured. But his attention had shifted, his mind clearly working on something else. Excuse me, I need to make a phone call. He walked away quickly, his posture tense. Lena watched him go, memorizing every detail to report back to Victor later. Catherine studied her with renewed interest. You're either very clever or very stupid. I haven't decided which yet. Why can't I be both? Because clever people don't admit to being bought. Catherine's eyes glittered. And stupid people don't make the kind of comment you made to me last night. So which is it, Lena? Are you a victim or a player? Lena thought about Victor standing from his wheelchair, about the folder of secrets hidden in her closet, about Marcus, somewhere in this city, maybe alive, maybe not. I'm a survivor, she said quietly. Same as everyone else here. Catherine's smile widened. Now that I believe. She glanced across the room to where Victor sat talking to Robert. Word of advice? Don't fall in love with your husband. Men like Victor Kane don't love. They use. And when you're no longer useful, she made a cutting gesture across her throat. Well, let's just say his previous relationships didn't end well. I'll keep that in mind. Do. Catherine patted her arm. I like you, Lena. You're interesting. Most of Victor's acquisitions are boring. But you've got bite. She leaned in close, her voice dropping. If you ever want to talk, really talk, about what it's like to be married to a man who sees you as property, you know where to find me. Then she glided away, leaving Lena standing alone by the windows with her heart hammering and her mind racing. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and careful conversations. Lena met at least 24 people whose names she'd memorized from Victor's files. She smiled. She listened. She played the role of the naive young bride who'd gotten lucky marrying into wealth. And she watched. She watched Robert and Thomas huddle in the corner, their conversation too quiet to overhear but their body language tense. She watched Daniel Shaw make 3 phone calls in an hour, each time stepping outside to talk. She watched Catherine work the room like a maestro, collecting information and planting seeds of discord with surgical precision. By midnight, Lena's feet ached in the designer heels Margaret had chosen, and her face hurt from smiling. When Victor finally signaled James that they were leaving, she felt like she'd run a marathon. The car ride back was silent until they were halfway home. Then Victor spoke. Tell me everything. Lena recounted the conversations with Daniel and Catherine, word for word. Victor listened without interrupting, his face impassive in the dim light of the passing street lamps. Daniel's scared, he said when she finished. He knows Thomas is becoming unstable. He's probably trying to figure out if you're a spy or just collateral damage. And Catherine? Catherine is exactly what she appears to be, a predator looking for weakness. Victor's jaw tightened. But she's also Robert's wife, which means anything you tell her goes straight back to him. Don't trust her empathy. It's a trap. I figured. Lena leaned back against the seat. She warned me not to fall in love with you, said your previous relationships didn't end well. Victor was quiet for a long moment. They didn't, but not for the reasons Catherine thinks. What happened to them? The woman I was with before the assassination attempt was named Sarah. Victor's voice went flat. She was killed in the attack that was supposed to kill me. The bullet that paralyzed me went through her first. He stared out the window. Robert ordered the hit. I can't prove it yet, but I will. Lena's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. Save your sympathy for when we find your brother. Victor turned to look at her. You did well tonight. Better than I expected. Daniel will report back to Thomas that you're harmless. That gives us an advantage. What's next? Next, we escalate. Victor's smile was dangerous. Tomorrow, I'm calling a meeting with all the territory managers. Every person who's been stealing from me will be in one room, and you're going to be there, watching, learning, preparing for what comes after. The car pulled through the mansion gates. Lena watched the house loom closer, this place that was supposed to be a prison, but was starting to feel like something else entirely. A war room, a fortress, a place where revenge was being planned with meticulous care. Get some rest, Victor said as James opened the door. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. Lena made it to the master suite before her legs gave out. She collapsed on the bed, still in the blue dress, her mind spinning with everything she'd seen and heard. Catherine's warning echoed in her head. Don't fall in love with your husband. She almost laughed. Love was the last thing on her mind. This was a partnership built on revenge and necessity. Victor wanted his empire back. Lena wanted her brother safe. Everything else was just theater. But as she finally drifted towards sleep, she couldn't quite shake the image of Victor standing from that wheelchair. The coiled power in his movements, the cold calculation in his eyes. He was dangerous, possibly unhinged, definitely not someone to trust completely, but he was also the only person who'd ever offered to help her find Marcus. And that made him the most important person in her world. The meeting room in Victor's mansion had been designed to intimidate. Mahogany paneling stretched from floor to ceiling, portraits of stern-faced men glaring down at a table that could seat 20. The chairs were expensive but deliberately uncomfortable, ensuring that no one settled in too comfortably. Every detail had been chosen to remind visitors that they were in Victor Kane's house, subject to Victor Kane's rules. Lena stood near the back wall, positioned where she could see every face but remain unremarkable herself. Victor had dressed her in gray, a fitted suit that looked professional but forgettable. Her hair was pulled back simply. No jewelry except for the thin wedding band that had appeared on her finger the morning after the ceremony. "Your furniture today," Victor had told her during breakfast. "Present, but invisible. They'll talk around you because they won't see you as a threat. Listen to everything. Remember everything." Now she watched as the territory managers filed in one by one, each man sizing up the others, calculating alliances and measuring threats. Robert Castellano arrived first, his silver hair perfectly styled, his suit probably worth more than a mid-sized car. He took a seat near the head of the table without waiting for permission, claiming territory through sheer arrogance. Thomas Marino came next, his rings catching the light as he poured himself water from the crystal pitcher. He nodded to Robert but didn't sit near him. Interesting. Victor had said they were working together, but the distance suggested tension beneath the surface. Daniel Shaw slipped in quietly, choosing a chair halfway down the table where he could observe without drawing attention. His eyes found Lena briefly, then slid away, dismissing her as irrelevant. Good. That was exactly what Victor wanted. 6 more men arrived in quick succession, each one a name from the files Lena had memorized. Marcus Rivera, who ran the docks. Anthony Chen, who controlled the gambling operations. Vincent Russo, whose protection rackets generated millions annually. Each one had been stealing from Victor. Each one thought they'd gotten away with it. Victor was the last to enter, wheeled in by James with Margaret following behind. The conversation died immediately. Every eye in the room tracked his progress to the head of the table, watching the broken king take his throne. "Gentlemen," Victor said once he was settled, "thank you for coming." "Of course." Robert's smile was all teeth. "We're always happy to support you, Victor, despite your limitations." "My limitations." Victor's tone was mild, almost amused. "Yes, let's discuss those." He gestured to Margaret, who placed a stack of folders on the table. "Over the past 3 years, my ability to manage day-to-day operations has been compromised. I've relied on each of you to maintain the territories, honor our agreements, and ensure the organization runs smoothly." Victor paused, his eyes moving from face to face. "I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for your service." The room relaxed fractionally. Several men exchanged glances, confused, wary, but increasingly confident. This was going better than they'd expected. "Of course," Thomas said, leaning back in his chair. "We've done our best to keep things running in your absence. It hasn't been easy, but we've managed." "You've done more than manage." Victor opened the top folder. "Marcus, the dock operations have actually increased revenue by 30% over the past 2 years. Impressive." Marcus Rivera shifted in his seat. "We found some efficiencies, cut some costs. By eliminating my oversight and pocketing the difference." Victor's voice remained pleasant. "You've stolen approximately $4 million through falsified shipping manifests and phantom labor costs. But yes, very efficient." The room went deadly silent. Marcus's face drained of color. "Victor, I don't know what you've heard, but I have the manifests." Victor pulled out a sheet of paper. "I have the bank records. I have testimony from 3 of your dock workers who've been documenting everything in exchange for immunity." He smiled. "I have enough evidence to put you away for 20 years, so please, don't insult me by denying it." Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, then looked desperately at Robert. The silver-haired man's expression was carefully neutral, revealing nothing. Victor moved to the next folder. "Anthony, your gambling operations show a profit decrease of 40%. That's remarkable considering underground gambling has exploded in popularity over the past 3 years. Care to explain?" Anthony Chen's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "The market has been volatile. The market has been booming. But you've been running a parallel operation through your cousin's casino in Atlantic City, funneling my customers there and splitting the profits." Victor pulled out more papers. "I have recordings of you negotiating the split. I have financial transfers. I have everything." "You can't prove—" "I can prove all of it." Victor's eyes were ice. "In fact, I've already shared the evidence with certain interested parties. The only question now is whether you'd prefer federal prison or a more traditional resolution. Anthony's face went gray. Vincent Russo was already standing, backing toward the door. I'm not listening to this. You can't threaten— Sit down, Vincent. Victor's voice cracked like a whip. You're not going anywhere. James moved from his position by the door, and Vincent saw the gun holstered under his jacket. The protection racket boss sank slowly back into his chair. Let's be very clear about what's happening here, Victor said softly. For 3 years, I've sat in this chair watching each of you steal from me, watching you divide my empire like vultures picking at a corpse. You thought I was helpless, broken, finished. He leaned forward. You were wrong. Victor— Robert's voice was calm, but Lena could see the calculation in his eyes. This is unnecessary. If there have been irregularities, we can discuss them like civilized men, make restitution, adjust our arrangements going forward. Our arrangements are over. Victor pulled out the final folder, the thickest one. Robert Castellano, you've been the most creative in your theft, redirecting funds through shell corporations, establishing competing operations in my territories, recruiting my people to work for you instead. Victor's smile was razor sharp. And most impressively, organizing the assassination attempt that killed Sarah and put me in this chair. The room exploded. That's a lie. Robert was on his feet, his face flushed red. I would never— You hired Jimmy Costa to do it. Victor's voice cut through the noise. Jimmy turned state's evidence 6 months ago. He's been very forthcoming about who paid him, how much, and why. The federal prosecutor has his full testimony. As of this morning, there's a sealed indictment with your name on it. Robert's hand moved toward his jacket. James's gun was out before he'd gotten halfway there. The barrel pointed directly at Robert's head. I wouldn't, James said quietly. Robert froze. His eyes darted around the room, looking for allies, for exits, for any way out. But the other men had gone still as stone, watching this play out with the careful attention of people trying not to become collateral damage. You have 2 choices, Victor continued as if nothing had happened. You can surrender yourself to the federal authorities and hope for a plea deal, or you can try to run, and I will hunt you down personally and finish what should have been done 3 years ago. You can't do this, Robert's voice shook with rage and fear. I have people, resources. You're a cripple in a chair, Victor. You can't— Victor stood up. The movement was smooth and controlled, no hesitation, no strain. One moment he was seated in the wheelchair, the next he was standing at full height, 6 feet of coiled muscle and cold fury. The room erupted in chaos. Men scrambled backward, chairs toppling. Thomas Marino's face went white as a sheet. Daniel Shaw made a small, choked sound. Even Robert stumbled back a step, his eyes wide with shock and dawning horror. I've been standing for 3 years, Victor said softly. Watching you, waiting, documenting every betrayal, every theft, every moment you thought I was too broken to notice. He took a step forward, and Robert retreated. The paralysis was a test. You all failed. Lena watched from her position against the wall, her heart hammering. She'd known Victor could walk, had seen him do it that first night. But watching him reveal it now, watching the carefully constructed facade crumble in front of the men who'd built their fortunes on his supposed weakness, it was terrifying and magnificent. This is insane, Thomas whispered. 3 years. You pretended for 3 years. I did what was necessary. Victor's gaze swept the room. Every person in this room except my wife and my staff is going to prison. The evidence has been compiled. The prosecutors are ready. You can surrender peacefully, or you can make this difficult. Either way, it ends today. And what about you? Robert's voice was venomous. You think you're clean? You think the feds won't come for you too? I've already made my arrangements. Victor smiled. In exchange for my testimony and evidence against all of you, I've been granted immunity for my past activities. Effective immediately, I'm cooperating with federal authorities to dismantle organized crime operations on the East Coast. He paused. Starting with this organization. Starting with you. The betrayal on their faces would have been comical if it weren't so deadly. These men had spent 3 years carving up Victor's empire, and now he was burning it all down, them included, and walking away free. You son of a— Robert lunged forward. He made it 2 steps before James tackled him to the ground. The gun pressed against Robert's temple, and James's voice was perfectly calm. "Don't move." Federal agents burst through the doors on some silent signal Lena had missed. They swarmed the room in tactical gear, weapons drawn, shouting commands. The territory managers were on the ground within seconds, hands zip-tied behind their backs, faces pressed against the expensive carpet. Lena watched it all unfold from her corner, invisible in her gray suit, as Victor had planned. She watched Marcus Rivera cry, watched Anthony Chen try to bargain, watched Vincent Russo go silent with shock, and she watched Robert Castellano stare at Victor with pure hatred as the agents dragged him to his feet. "This isn't over," Robert hissed. "You think the feds will protect you? You think immunity keeps you safe? I have friends, Victor, people who owe me, and they're going to make you pay." "No," Victor's voice was soft and final. "They won't. Because in about 30 minutes, those friends are going to be arrested too. I gave the prosecutors everyone, Robert, every contact, every operation, every dirty cop and compromised official. The entire network is coming down." Robert's face twisted with rage and desperation. "My wife, my son, you can't." "Catherine will be arrested within the hour on conspiracy charges." Victor cut him off. "Your son is already in federal custody. I made sure of that 3 days ago." He leaned in close. "You took Sarah from me. You put me in this chair. Or tried to. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" The agents hauled Robert away, still shouting threats, still promising revenge that would never come. The others followed in a parade of handcuffs and broken power. Within 10 minutes, the room was empty except for Victor, James, Margaret, and Lena. Victor sank back into the wheelchair, not because he needed it, but because the performance was so ingrained it was automatic. Then he caught himself and stood again, rolling his shoulders like he was shaking off 3 years of pretense. "It's done," Margaret said quietly. "They're all in custody." "Not all of them." Victor pulled out his phone, checking messages. Catherine ran. She saw the agents coming and went out the back. "They're tracking her now." "She won't get far." James holstered his weapon. "She has nowhere to go. Her accounts are frozen. Her contacts are compromised. She's running on fear and adrenaline. Make sure they find her quickly." Victor's tone was sharp. "Catherine knows too much. If she gets desperate enough to start talking to the wrong people." He didn't finish the sentence, but Lena understood. Catherine Castellano was dangerous precisely because she was smart and vindictive and had spent years collecting other people's secrets. A cornered Catherine could do a lot of damage before she went down. "I'll coordinate with the field teams." James left quickly, already on his phone. Margaret touched Victor's arm briefly. "You should rest. This has been—" "I'm fine." But Victor's face was gray with exhaustion. The adrenaline that had carried him through the confrontation was fading, leaving him looking older and more worn than Lena had ever seen him. "I need to make some calls, ensure the transition goes smoothly." "The transition to what?" Lena asked. She'd stayed silent through the entire arrest, playing her role as invisible observer. But now they were alone, and she needed answers. "You just destroyed your own organization. What comes next?" Victor looked at her for a long moment. "What comes next is complicated. The immunity deal requires me to cooperate fully, which means exposing operations I've spent decades building. Everything I've built is gone. But I'm free. I'm alive. And I have enough resources hidden away to start over." "As what?" "As whatever I choose." Victor moved to the window, looking out at the gardens. "I'm tired of this life, Lena. Tired of watching my back, tired of the violence, tired of becoming the kind of man who has to pretend to be paralyzed just to survive. The empire is gone. Let it burn." "And my brother?" Lena's voice was sharp. "You promised you'd help me find Marcus." "I haven't forgotten." Victor turned to face her. "In fact, that's where we go next. Now that Robert and Thomas are in custody, we can access their records, their operations, including the human trafficking networks they've been running." Lena's breath caught. "You think Marcus was trafficked?" "I think he disappeared the same week Robert's trafficking operation expanded into Queens. I think your father's gambling debts made your family vulnerable, And I think Robert has always been willing to hurt innocent people to send messages to his enemies. Victor's expression was grim. I couldn't investigate properly while maintaining the Paralysis Act. But now? Now we can tear apart every operation Robert ever touched until we find answers. Margaret stepped forward. Sir, there's something you should know. During the arrest, Daniel Shaw tried to make a deal. He offered information about a facility in Jersey City, said Robert had been keeping people there. Bargaining chips, he called them. Victor went very still. What kind of people? He didn't specify, but he mentioned that some had been there for years. Margaret's eyes cut to Lena. The federal team is moving on the location now. Lena's heart stopped. 3 years. Marcus had been gone for 3 years. If Robert had taken him, if he'd been using her brother as some kind of leverage. I need to go there, she said. Now. If there's any chance Marcus is, absolutely not. Victor's tone was firm. You're not going anywhere near an active federal operation. If Marcus is there, the agents will find him. If he's not, rushing in won't help. You don't understand. Lena moved toward him, her hands clenched into fists. I've spent 3 years looking for him. 3 years of dead ends and false hopes. If he's there, if he's been there this whole time while I was searching, then waiting another few hours won't change anything. Victor's voice gentled slightly. I know this is hard, but running into an active raid is how people get killed. Let the federal team secure the facility. If Marcus is there, they'll find him safely. And if he's not there, Lena's voice cracked. If this is just another dead end, then we keep looking. Victor met her eyes. I made you a promise, Lena. I keep my promises. We will find your brother, but we'll do it smart, not reckless. Margaret's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then at Victor. The team just entered the facility. They're reporting multiple individuals in holding. They need time to process everyone and determine identities. The wait was torture. Lena paced the length of the meeting room while Victor made phone calls, coordinating with his federal contacts, ensuring that his cooperation was documented and that the arrests went smoothly. Margaret brought coffee that Lena couldn't drink, her stomach too knotted with anxiety to accept anything. An hour passed, then another. The afternoon sun moved across the floor in slow progression, marking time that felt like torture. Finally, Margaret's phone rang. She answered, listened, then handed it wordlessly to Victor. He spoke quietly, asking questions Lena couldn't quite hear. His face gave nothing away, but she watched his knuckles go white around the phone. When he finally hung up, he turned to her with an expression she couldn't read. They found 17 people in the facility, he said carefully, most of them women, some as young as 15. They've been held there for various lengths of time, used as leverage against family members or sold into various operations. Marcus? Lena's voice was barely a whisper. Was he? There was one male, approximately 20 years old, brown hair, brown eyes. He had a tattoo on his left shoulder, a compass rose. Lena stopped breathing. Marcus had gotten that tattoo for his 16th birthday, against their mother's wishes. She'd helped him hide it for months. The young man wouldn't give his name to the agents, Victor continued. He's traumatized. Hasn't spoken beyond yes or no answers. But the physical description matches the photo you showed me. He paused. Lena, I can't promise it's him, but there's a chance. Where is he? They're transporting everyone to a federal facility for medical evaluation and processing. It'll take time to confirm identities, especially for people who aren't talking. I need to see him. Lena was already moving toward the door. If it's Marcus, if he's alive, I know. Victor stood, abandoning the wheelchair entirely now. James is bringing the car around, but Lena... He caught her arm gently. Prepare yourself. If it is your brother, he's been held captive for 3 years. Whatever Robert did to him, whatever he experienced, he won't be the same person you remember. I don't care. Lena pulled free. I just need him to be alive. The drive to the federal facility took 40 minutes through traffic that seemed designed to maximize suffering. Lena sat rigid in this back seat, her hands clasped so tightly her nails drew blood from her palms. Victor sat beside her, silent for once, his presence oddly comforting despite everything. The facility was a converted warehouse in an industrial area, surrounded by federal vehicles and agents in tactical gear. Victor's immunity deal got them through security, though the agent who escorted them inside made it clear they were being watched closely. The individuals from the Jersey City location are in separate evaluation rooms, the agent explained as they walked through sterile hallways. We're processing them one at a time. The young man you're asking about is in room 7, but I need to warn you, he's not responding well to questions. Our psychologist thinks he's experiencing severe trauma and dissociation. Can I see him? Lena asked. The agent hesitated. Are you family? I'm his sister. Then yes, but I need you to understand that we can't confirm identity yet. Don't get your hopes up until we're certain. He opened the door to room 7 and Lena stepped through. The young man sat in a chair against the far wall, his arms wrapped around himself, his eyes fixed on the floor. He was too thin, his clothes hanging off a frame that should have been broader. His hair was longer than Marcus used to wear it, falling across his face in tangled waves. But the shape of his jaw, the set of his shoulders. Marcus? Lena's voice came out broken. The young man's head snapped up. For a heartbeat, their eyes met. Brown on brown, sister and brother, separated by 3 years in trauma Lena couldn't begin to imagine. Then his face crumpled, and he whispered, Lena? She crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled him into her arms. He was shaking, his whole body trembling like he might break apart. But his arms came up to grip her back, holding on like she was the only real thing in the world. I've got you, Lena whispered against his hair. I've got you. You're safe now. You're safe. Marcus made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You found me. I thought no one was looking. I thought Dad didn't care, and you were gone, and I never stopped looking. Lena pulled back just enough to see his face, to reassure herself that he was real. 3 years, Marcus. I searched for 3 years. I never gave up. He said you wouldn't come. Marcus's voice was raw. Robert, he said I was worthless, that Dad sold me for his debts, and you didn't care enough to look. He lied. Fury burned through Lena's chest. Robert Castellano is a monster, and he's going to prison for the rest of his life. He can't hurt you anymore. Marcus's eyes moved past her to where Victor stood in the doorway. Who's that? It's complicated. Lena glanced back at her husband, the man who'd orchestrated all of this. He helped me find you. That's all that matters right now. The federal psychologist arrived then, followed by medical staff who needed to complete their evaluation. Lena refused to leave Marcus's side through all of it. She held his hand while they checked his vitals, stayed close while the psychologist asked gentle questions about his experiences. The picture that emerged was horrifying. Robert had taken Marcus's insurance against Lena's father, holding him to ensure the gambling debts were paid, then keeping him when new uses emerged. Marcus had been moved between facilities, threatened into silence, told repeatedly that his family had abandoned him. 3 years of isolation and fear, and carefully calibrated psychological torture designed to break him down completely. But he hadn't broken. Not entirely. Some core part of Marcus Carter had survived, waiting for rescue he'd almost stopped believing would come. He'll need extensive therapy, the psychologist told Lena quietly while Marcus underwent a physical exam in the next room. The trauma is severe. He may have PTSD, depression, anxiety. Recovery will take years, not weeks. I don't care how long it takes, Lena's voice was fierce. He's alive. That's what matters. You should also know that his captivity may have affected his ability to trust people, to feel safe. There will be setbacks and difficult days. The psychologist's expression was kind but honest. You'll need support too. Taking care of a trauma survivor is exhausting. I can handle it. I believe you. The psychologist glanced at Victor, who'd been standing silent throughout. Is he family too? He's my husband, Lena said, the word still feeling strange on her tongue. It's recent. Well, having a stable home environment will be crucial for Marcus's recovery. Routine, safety, people he can trust. The psychologist smiled slightly. You found him just in time, Mrs. Kane. A few more months in that facility, and the damage might have been irreversible. When they finally cleared Marcus for release into Lena's custody, the sun was setting outside. Victor had arranged for additional security, just a precaution, he said, until they were certain all of Robert's operation had been dismantled. Marcus eyed the guards nervously, but accepted Lena's assurance that they were there to help. The drive back to the mansion was quiet. Marcus stared out the window like he was seeing the world for the first time, his hand gripped tightly in Lena's. Every few minutes, she caught him glancing at her like he was afraid she might disappear. "I'm not going anywhere," she murmured. "I promise." "I know." But his grip didn't loosen. At the mansion, Margaret was waiting with a room prepared, simple and clean, with windows that overlooked the garden and locks on the inside of the door that Marcus could control. She'd laid out clean clothes, basic toiletries, everything someone emerging from captivity might need to feel human again. "If you need anything," Margaret told Marcus gently, "anything at all, you can find me or press this button." She showed him the call system. "Day or night, you're safe here." Marcus nodded but didn't speak. His eyes kept darting to the exits, cataloging escape routes even as exhaustion made him sway on his feet. "Get some rest," Lena said. "I'll be right down the hall. Door's open if you need me." She waited until Marcus disappeared into the bathroom before stepping out into the hallway where Victor waited. "Thank you," she said simply. There weren't words big enough for what he'd done, for keeping his promise, for bringing her brother home. "You don't need to thank me." Victor's expression was unreadable. "I told you I keep my promises. Your immunity deal, the cooperation with the feds, you destroyed your entire empire for this." "I destroyed my empire because it was built on violence and betrayal and men like Robert Castellano." Victor moved toward the stairs. "Finding Marcus was just one piece of burning it all down." "Still," Lena followed him, "you could have walked away after the arrests. Let me search for Marcus on my own." "But you didn't." Victor paused at the top of the stairs. "You chose to stay when I offered you freedom. You became my partner in this. That means something." He met her eyes. "Besides, I know what it's like to lose someone you love. I wouldn't wish that on anyone." Sarah, the woman who died in the assassination attempt. Victor had never mentioned her again after that first night, but Lena could see the weight of that loss in his eyes. "What happens now?" she asked. "Robert's in custody. Your organization is destroyed. The feds have what they wanted. What's next for you?" "Rebuilding," Victor started down the stairs. "Legitimately this time. I have resources, contacts in legal industries, enough money to start fresh. Maybe I'll become boring, open a consulting firm, disappear into normalcy." "You'd hate that." "Probably." A slight smile. "But I'm tired of the alternative, tired of watching my back, tired of becoming the kind of monster I was supposed to be fighting." He glanced back at her. "What about you? You have Marcus back. You could leave now, take him somewhere safe and start over." The offer hung in the air between them. Freedom. The thing Lena had wanted since the moment she walked into this mansion. But when she thought about leaving, about taking Marcus and disappearing, something in her chest tightened. This place had become familiar. Victor had become not a friend exactly, but something, a partner, someone who'd kept his word when everyone else in her life had failed her. "I think we should talk about that when Marcus is stable," Lena said carefully, "when he's healthy and safe and ready to make decisions about his future, not while he's still recovering." Victor studied her for a long moment. "That's practical." "I'm a practical person." "Yes." His smile widened slightly. "You are. It's one of your more useful qualities." They reached the bottom of the stairs, and Margaret appeared with news that Catherine Castellano had been apprehended trying to board a flight to the Caymans. The last of the territory managers were processed and charged. The empire Victor had built and then destroyed was officially finished. And upstairs, Marcus was home. Lena stood in the entrance hall of the mansion, this place that had been a prison and was becoming something else, and felt the pieces of her life shifting into new configurations she couldn't quite name yet. The war wasn't over. There would be trials, testimonies, people loyal to Robert who might seek revenge. Marcus's recovery would be long and difficult, and whatever strange partnership she'd built with Victor would need to be examined and defined in the light of day. But tonight, her brother was safe, and that was enough. 3 weeks after Marcus came home, Lena woke to the sound of screaming. She was out of bed and running before conscious thought caught up, her bare feet silent on the marble floors as she sprinted down the hallway to Marcus's room. The door was locked from the inside. His choice, his control. But she could hear him through the wood, crying out words that made no sense, trapped in whatever nightmare had followed him home from captivity. "Marcus!" She pounded on the door. "Marcus, it's Lena! You're safe! You're home!" The screaming stopped. She heard movement, then the lock clicking open. Marcus stood in the doorway, his face pale and slick with sweat, his hands shaking. He was 20 years old but looked younger in that moment, lost and terrified. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I dreamed that—" "Don't apologize." Lena pulled him into a hug, feeling how his whole body trembled. "You have nothing to be sorry for. I woke everyone up. No one cares." She guided him back into the room, sitting him down on the bed. The sheets were tangled from thrashing, pillows scattered across the floor. "Do you want to talk about it?" Marcus shook his head. "Same dream as always, the facility, Robert telling me you weren't coming, that I'd be there forever." His voice cracked. "Sometimes I still think I am. That this is the dream and that place is real." "It's not real anymore." Lena kept her voice steady even as her heart broke. "You're here. You're safe. Robert's in prison awaiting trial, and he'll never touch you again." A soft knock interrupted them. Victor stood in the doorway, dressed in dark pants and a t-shirt, looking more human than Lena had ever seen him. He'd abandoned the wheelchair entirely after the arrests, moving through the mansion with the predatory grace of someone who'd been caged too long. "I heard the noise," he said quietly. "Is everything all right?" "Nightmare," Lena answered. "We're okay." Victor's eyes moved to Marcus, assessing. "The psychologist said they'd get worse before they get better, that the brain processes trauma in stages." "I know what she said." Lena's tone was sharper than intended. She softened it. "I'm handling it." "I know you are." Victor leaned against the doorframe. "But you haven't slept more than 4 hours a night in 3 weeks. At some point, handling it means accepting help." He was right, which made it more annoying. Since Marcus came home, Lena had barely left his side. She sat with him during therapy sessions, stayed up when nightmares made sleep impossible, researched trauma recovery until her eyes burned. The psychologist had warned her about caregiver burnout, but Lena couldn't bring herself to step back. She'd spent 3 years searching for her brother. Now that she'd found him, letting him out of her sight felt impossible. "I can stay with him tonight," Victor offered. "Give you a few hours of uninterrupted rest." Marcus looked between them, his expression uncertain. "I don't need a babysitter." "It's not babysitting," Victor's tone was matter-of-fact. "It's 2 people who both have trouble sleeping sitting up together instead of alone. Your sister needs rest, and I was awake anyway." "Why were you awake?" Marcus asked. Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Old habits. When you spend 3 years pretending to be paralyzed, normal sleep patterns become optional." There was something in his voice, a weariness that matched the shadows under his eyes. Lena realized she'd been so focused on Marcus that she hadn't noticed Victor's own exhaustion. The trials were starting next month. He'd be testifying against everyone he'd once called allies. The immunity deal protected him legally, but did nothing for the target it painted on his back. "Fine," Lena said finally. "But if he needs me, I'll get you immediately." Victor moved into the room, settling into the armchair by the window. "Go. Sleep. We'll be here when you wake up." Lena hesitated, looking at Marcus. Her brother nodded, still pale but steadier now. "I'm okay, Lena. Really." She made it back to the master suite before the exhaustion hit her like a physical weight. The bed swallowed her whole, and she was asleep before her head fully settled on the pillow. She woke 6 hours later to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. Margaret stood by the door with a tray, her expression knowing. "Mr. Kane asked me to let you sleep," Margaret said. "He and Marcus are in the library." Lena showered quickly and dressed, then followed the sound of voices. She found them exactly where Margaret said they'd be. Victor in one of the leather chairs, Marcus curled up on the window seat with a book. They were talking quietly, Marcus's voice more animated than Lena had heard it in weeks. And then Lena convinced Mom that the paint was supposed to be on the ceiling, like it was an art project. Marcus was almost smiling. Mom never found out I'd knocked over the can trying to reach the top shelf. How old were you? Victor asked. 8, maybe? Lena was 12. She was always covering for me. Marcus glanced up as Lena entered. We were just talking about when we were kids. I heard. Lena accepted the coffee Margaret had sent with her. The paint incident was a disaster. I'm amazed Mom believed that story. She wanted to believe it. Victor's tone was mild. Parents usually do when the alternative is accepting their children are destructive. Were you destructive as a child? Marcus asked. Spectacularly. Victor's smile was genuine this time. I once set fire to my father's study trying to build a rocket. He was less forgiving than your mother. They talked for another hour, trading stories that felt normal and easy. Marcus laughed, actually laughed, at something Victor said about his own disastrous childhood experiments, and Lena felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. Later, when Marcus went upstairs to his therapy session with Dr. Richardson, Lena cornered Victor in the hallway. Thank you, she said, for last night, for this morning, for making him laugh. He's a good kid. Victor's expression was thoughtful. Smart, resilient. He'll recover from this. The psychologist says recovery isn't linear, that there will be setbacks. There will be. Victor met her eyes. But he has you. That matters more than you realize. Lena wanted to argue, to point out all the ways she was failing. The night she couldn't stop the nightmares, the fears she couldn't erase, the 3 years she couldn't give back. But Victor's phone buzzed before she could speak. He checked it, and his expression went cold. I need to take this. He walked away quickly, already answering the call in a voice too low for Lena to hear. She watched him disappear into his study, tension radiating from his shoulders. Something was wrong. Margaret appeared at her elbow. Mrs. Kane, you have a visitor. She's waiting in the front drawing room. Who is it? Catherine Castellano. Lena's blood went cold. I thought she was in custody. She made bail yesterday. Her lawyer argued she wasn't a flight risk. Margaret's expression was grim. Mr. Kane wasn't informed. Someone in the prosecutor's office failed to notify us. Does Victor know she's here? Not yet. He's on the phone with his federal contact trying to determine how this happened. Margaret paused. She's asking to speak with you specifically. She said it's important. Every instinct screamed at Lena to refuse. Catherine Castellano was poison, the kind of woman who weaponized kindness and turned empathy into ammunition. But there was something in Margaret's eyes, concern, maybe, or warning. I'll talk to her, Lena said, but stay close. If this is some kind of trap, James is already positioned outside the drawing room. You'll be perfectly safe. The drawing room was decorated in pale blues and cream, designed to be soothing and elegant. Catherine stood by the window, backlit by afternoon sun, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than Lena's childhood home. She looked thinner than she had at the gala, her face drawn with stress, but her smile was the same calculated weapon. Lena. Catherine turned as she entered. Thank you for seeing me. I'm not sure I should be. Lena stayed near the door, keeping distance between them. Your husband tried to kill mine. Your family has been stealing from him for years. Why would I want anything to do with you? Because I'm not my husband. Catherine's smile faltered. I know what Robert did. I know about the trafficking, the attempted murder, all of it, and I want you to know that I had no part in any of it. That's convenient. It's true. Catherine moved closer, and Lena forced herself not to step back. Robert kept me in the dark about his operations. I knew he was ambitious, that he wanted Victor's empire, but I didn't know about the violence, the people he hurt. Her voice dropped. I didn't know about your brother. Lena's hands clenched into fists. Don't you dare use Marcus to... I'm not using him. I'm trying to apologize. Catherine's eyes were bright with what might have been tears. When I found out what Robert did, what he'd been doing for years, I was horrified. These past 3 weeks, sitting in a cell, thinking about the people he destroyed, I can't make that right. But I can try to help you prevent more damage. What does that mean? Catherine glanced toward the door, lowering her voice. Robert had partners, People who helped him with the trafficking operation, who are still out there operating. The federal prosecutors have some of them, but not all. There's a man named Vincent Costa, no relation to the Jimmy Costa who testified against Robert. This Vincent runs a network that spans from here to Boston. He was Robert's primary contact for moving people. Why are you telling me this? Because Vincent is scared. Catherine pulled out her phone, showing Lena a screenshot of a text message. He reached out to me yesterday. He thinks I might flip on him, might give evidence to save myself. He's threatening to eliminate anyone who could testify against him. The message was brief and chilling. Keep your mouth shut or your family pays. You know what I'm capable of. He's going to kill witnesses, Lena said slowly. Yes, starting with the people who survived his facilities. Catherine's voice hardened. Your brother is a survivor, Lena, which makes him a target. The room spun. Lena grabbed the back of a chair for support. You're lying. This is some kind of manipulation. I swear I'm not. Catherine's desperation seemed genuine. I have nothing left to gain by lying to you. My marriage is over. My life is destroyed. The only thing I can do now is prevent Vincent from hurting more people. She took a breath. I'm meeting with the prosecutors tomorrow morning. I'm giving them everything I know about Vincent's operation. But I wanted to warn you first. Wanted you to know that Marcus needs extra protection until Vincent is in custody. Lena stared at her, trying to read truth from lies in Catherine's expression. The woman was a master manipulator. She'd proven that at the Gala. But there was something raw in her eyes now, something that looked almost like genuine fear. Why should I believe you? Lena asked quietly. Because you're smart enough to verify everything I've said. Catherine set her phone on the table. Check with your federal contacts. Ask about Vincent Costa. Look into the trafficking network that's still operating. You'll find I'm telling the truth. She moved toward the door. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything except that you protect your brother. That's all. She was gone before Lena could respond, leaving behind the phone and a knot of fear in Lena's stomach. James appeared immediately. Are you all right? Find Victor, Lena said. Now. Victor listened to Lena's account of Catherine's visit with a face like stone. When she finished, he picked up Catherine's phone and scrolled through the messages, his expression growing darker with each screen. Vincent Costa is real, he said finally. He was Robert's partner in the trafficking operation. We gave the feds his name, but he went to ground before they could arrest him. He looked up at Lena. Catherine's right about one thing. He's extremely dangerous. If he thinks Marcus can testify against him, he'll come after Marcus. Lena's voice was steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. What do we do? We increase security, immediately. Victor was already dialing. James, I need a full team on the property, rotating shifts, armed guards at every entrance. No one gets in or out without clearance. He paused. And contact the federal prosecutor. Tell them Catherine Castellano provided intelligence about an active threat. We need Vincent Costa in custody yesterday. The mansion transformed over the next few hours. Guards appeared at every door and window. James coordinated with a private security firm Victor had used before, bringing in people he trusted personally. Dr. Richardson's session with Marcus was moved to the mansion instead of her office. Margaret ensured that all the household staff were accounted for and briefed on the new security protocols. Marcus noticed the changes immediately. What's happening? He asked when he came downstairs to find armed guards in the hallway. Why are there so many people? Lena pulled him into the study and closed the door. She told him everything. Catherine's visit, the threat from Vincent Costa, the possibility that he was still in danger from the people who'd held him captive. Marcus listened without interrupting, his face going progressively paler. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. I knew this wasn't over, he said finally. I knew it couldn't be that easy. It's not your fault. I'm a witness. Marcus's voice was flat. I can identify people, describe the facility, testify about what happened. Of course they want me dead. He looked at Lena with eyes too old for his age. Should I just disappear? Would that keep you safe? Absolutely not. Lena gripped his shoulders. You're not going anywhere. We're going to keep you safe, and the federal team is going to arrest Vincent, and you're going to testify and help put these people away forever. And if they get to me first, they won't. Victor spoke from the doorway. I've survived assassination attempts, betrayals, and 3 years of playing dead while my empire collapsed. Vincent Costa is dangerous, but he's not invincible. And he's made a critical mistake. What's that? Marcus asked. He's threatened someone I've promised to protect. Victor's smile was cold and sharp. Vincent thinks he can operate in shadows, eliminate witnesses, and disappear. He doesn't know that I've spent 3 years learning how to destroy people from the inside out. He's about to get an education. That night, Victor called an emergency meeting in the study. Lena and Marcus sat on the leather couch while Victor paced, his mind clearly working through strategies and contingencies. The federal team is searching for Vincent, but he has resources and hiding places they don't know about. Victor stopped by the window. I know those places. I know his contacts, his patterns, his weaknesses. The feds are searching blind. I'm not. You're going after him yourself, Lena said. I'm going to find him and hand him to the prosecutors on a silver platter. Victor's eyes were ice. But I need to move quickly before he makes a move against Marcus. Let me help, Lena said immediately. Absolutely not. You said I was your partner, that we were in this together. That was before your brother's life was at stake. Victor's tone was firm. Marcus needs you here, safe, not chasing a human trafficker through the city. What Marcus needs is for Vincent Costa to be in prison. Lena stood, meeting Victor's gaze. And you need backup, someone you can trust, someone who has every reason to want Vincent caught. Marcus spoke up quietly. She's right. You can't do this alone. I can and I will. Victor's jaw tightened. Lena, I am not putting you in danger. I'm already in danger. Lena's voice rose. Vincent threatened Marcus, which means he's threatened me. Catherine warned us, which means she's a target too. We're all in this whether we want to be or not. She took a breath. You taught me how to observe, how to listen, how to gather intelligence. Use that, use me. Victor stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to James, who'd been standing silent by the door. What do you think? I think Mrs. Kane has proven she can handle herself in dangerous situations. James's tone was respectful. I also think you work better with a partner than alone. You always have. Victor closed his eyes briefly, and Lena could see him fighting between logic and something else. Protection, maybe, or fear of losing another person he'd come to care about. Fine, he said finally, but we do this my way. You follow my lead, you stay close, and at the first sign of real danger, you get out. Understood? Understood. Good. Victor pulled out his phone. Because we're leaving in an hour. I have a contact who can point us toward Vincent's current location, but we need to move before he realizes Catherine's talking to the prosecutors. Marcus stood, his face determined despite the fear in his eyes. I want updates. Every hour. I need to know you're both safe. You'll have them. Lena pulled him into a hug. Stay here with James and the security team. Don't open the door for anyone except Margaret or Dr. Richardson. Promise me. I promise. Marcus pulled back. But Lena, be careful. I just got you back. I can't lose you now. You won't. She tried to sound confident. Victor's too stubborn to let anything happen to me. Damn right, Victor muttered. Now let's move. We're running out of time. The contact Victor mentioned turned out to be a woman named Sophia who ran a bar in Red Hook. She was in her 60s, steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, with eyes that missed nothing. She poured them whiskey without asking and waited until they'd both drunk before speaking. Vincent Costa. She said the name like it tasted bad. You're hunting him? We need to find him before he disappears or kills more people, Victor said. He's already killed 2 people. Sophia refilled their glasses. Got word 3 hours ago. A couple who survived one of his facilities. They were in protective custody, and somehow Vincent got to them anyway. Lena's blood ran cold. How? Someone in the federal office is on his payroll. Has to be. Sophia's expression was grim. Vincent knew exactly where they were, exactly when to strike. He's cleaning house, eliminating anyone who can testify. Which means Marcus is next, Lena whispered. Not if we find Vincent first. Victor leaned forward. Sophia, I need everything you know about his current location. Every contact, every safe house, every person who might be hiding him. Sophia studied him. You're asking me to betray someone who will kill me for talking. I'm asking you to help stop a monster who's been trafficking people for profit. Victor's voice was hard. How many girls have disappeared from this neighborhood in the past 5 years, Sophia? How many families are still searching for missing daughters, missing sons? Vincent did that. He's still doing it. Motte-san. Sophia's jaw tightened. There's a warehouse in Sunset Park. Vincent's been using it as a temporary base. He thinks no one knows about it, but my nephew works security for the building next door. He's seen people coming and going at odd hours. She wrote down an address on a napkin and slid it across the bar. But Victor? Vincent's not alone. He's got at least 6 men with him, all armed, all willing to kill. You go in there without serious backup, you're not coming out. We'll have backup, Victor assured her. The federal team will move once we confirm his location. And if they can't get there in time? Victor's smile was dangerous. Then we improvise. They left the bar and drove to Sunset Park in silence. Lena's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Still safe? Guards everywhere. Any updates? She replied, Found a lead. We'll update soon. Stay put. The warehouse Sophia mentioned was exactly what Lena expected. A decaying building in an industrial area that looked abandoned but wasn't quite empty. Light showed in a few windows on the second floor. 2 cars were parked in the loading bay, expensive models that didn't fit the neighborhood. Vincent's definitely here, Victor murmured. They were parked a block away, watching through binoculars. Question is how we confirm it without tipping him off. We could call the federal team now, Lena suggested. Let them handle it. And risk Vincent escaping while they organize a raid? No. Victor lowered the binoculars. We need visual confirmation first. Once we're certain he's inside, then we call in the cavalry. How do we get visual confirmation? Victor smiled grimly, very carefully. They approached the warehouse from the back, using the shadows and abandoned equipment as cover. Victor moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, and Lena followed his lead, remembering every lesson he'd taught her about observation and stealth. They reached a window on the ground floor. Victor peered inside, then gestured for Lena to look. The interior had been converted into a command center of sorts. Maps on the walls, computers set up on makeshift desks, and in the center of it all, a man Lena recognized from the photos Victor had shown her weeks ago. Vincent Costa, mid-40s, average height, with the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him. Except for the eyes. Cold and calculating and completely devoid of empathy. He was talking on the phone, his free hand gesturing sharply. 3 other men stood nearby, all armed. That's him, Victor breathed. Call it in, now. Lena pulled out her phone and dialed the federal contact Victor had given her. She reported their location, Vincent's presence, the number of armed men. The agent on the other end promised a team within 20 minutes. 20 minutes, Lena whispered to Victor after hanging up. Can we wait that long? We don't have a choice. Glass shattered above them. One of Vincent's men was leaning out a second-floor window, gun pointed directly at them. Run! Victor grabbed Lena's hand and they sprinted, bullets tearing into the concrete behind them. They made it to the parked car as more men poured out of the warehouse, shouting commands and firing. Victor started the engine and floored it, tires screaming as they careened out of the industrial park. Lena twisted in her seat, watching the warehouse recede. They're following us, she said. One of the expensive cars had peeled out of the loading bay in pursuit. I see them. Victor's voice was calm despite the speed. Hold on. He took corners at terrifying velocity, using his knowledge of the streets to navigate through tight spaces the pursuit car couldn't manage. After 10 minutes of high-speed chase, they'd lost their tail. Victor pulled into an abandoned lot and killed the engine. They sat in silence, both breathing hard. Well, Lena said finally, that went badly. It could have been worse. Victor was already dialing. But now Vincent knows we're hunting him. He'll relocate before the federal team arrives. So what do we do? Victor's smile was sharp and dangerous. We don't give him time to relocate. We call in every favor I have left, and we end this tonight. The favors Victor called in came from places Lena hadn't known existed. Within 2 hours, they had a surveillance team tracking Vincent's movements, a contact inside the warehouse complex feeding them real-time information, and 3 former military contractors who owed Victor their lives positioned around the perimeter. The federal team was coordinating their raid for midnight, but Victor had made it clear they were moving sooner. Vincent will run the moment he feels cornered, Victor explained as they regrouped in a safe house across from the warehouse. We have a 4-hour window before he ghosts completely. The feds can clean up after, but we need to lock him down first. Lena checked her phone again. Marcus had texted 3 times in the past hour, each message more anxious than the last. She sent back reassurance she didn't quite feel and pocketed the device. "Tell me the plan," she said. Victor spread out blueprints of the warehouse on the table. "Vincent has 6 men inside, all armed, but he's arrogant. Thinks his money and connections make him untouchable. That's his weakness." He pointed to a service entrance on the east side. "My contact says this door has faulty wiring on the alarm system. We can get in without triggering alerts. And once we're inside, we find Vincent's command center, probably still the 2nd floor where we saw him earlier. We get photographic evidence of his operation, his files, anything that ties him definitively to the trafficking network." Victor's eyes met hers. "Then we lock the building down and call in the federal team to make the arrest." "You make it sound simple." "It won't be." Victor pulled out 2 earpieces, handing her one. "Stay connected to me at all times. If something goes wrong, you run. Don't try to be a hero." "That's rich coming from you." "I'm serious, Lena." His voice went hard. "Marcus needs you alive more than he needs Vincent Costa dead. Promise me that if this goes sideways, you'll get out." Lena thought about her brother, safe in the mansion with armed guards, waiting for news that his nightmare was finally over. She thought about the past 3 weeks watching him struggle with trauma, seeing him wake up screaming, knowing that Vincent Costa was still out there, still a threat. "I promise," she said. "But only if you promise the same. You don't get to play martyr and leave me to explain to Marcus why the man who saved him got himself killed." Victor's expression softened slightly. "Deal." They moved at 11:30, using the darkness and the industrial area's general abandonment as cover. The contractors Victor had hired created diversions at 2 other locations, pulling some of Vincent's security away from the main building. By the time Lena and Victor reached the service entrance, only 3 guards remained inside according to their contact. The door opened with minimal resistance. Victor had been right about the faulty alarm. It didn't even register their entry. They slipped into a corridor that smelled of mold and diesel fuel, following the blueprints toward the stairs. "2nd floor, east wing," Victor murmured into his earpiece. 2 hostiles confirmed in the main room, 1 patrolling the hallway. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd thought the Gala had been nerve-wracking, but this was different. This was immediate danger, the kind where one wrong move meant bullets instead of insults. They reached the stairs and climbed in silence. The patrolling guard's footsteps echoed from somewhere above. Victor held up a hand, signaling Lena to wait. He moved forward alone, and 30 seconds later there was a soft thud, and the guard's footsteps stopped. "Clear," Victor's voice came through the earpiece. "Moving to the main room." Lena followed, stepping over the unconscious guard Victor had zip-tied and left in a supply closet. The hallway beyond opened into a larger space, the same room they'd glimpsed through the window earlier. Maps still covered the walls, computers humming with data. And there, standing with his back to them while talking on the phone, was Vincent Costa. "Don't care what it costs," Vincent was saying. "I want every witness dead by morning, starting with the Carter kid. He's the biggest threat." Lena's blood turned to ice. Victor's hand found hers, squeezing once in warning or reassurance. "The security at Kane's mansion is tight," Vincent continued. "But everyone has a weakness. Find it. Exploit it. I want confirmation by dawn that the kid is neutralized." Rage burned through Lena's fear. This man was casually ordering her brother's death, like he was placing a takeout order. She started forward, but Victor's grip tightened, holding her back. "Not yet," he breathed. "We need evidence first." He pulled out his phone, setting it to record video. They watched as Vincent ended his call and moved to one of the computers, pulling up files that showed photos of Marcus, detailed layouts of Victor's mansion, guard schedules that shouldn't have been accessible to anyone outside the security team. Someone inside is feeding him information, Lena whispered. We'll deal with that later. Victor was still recording, capturing every detail. Right now, we focus on Vincent. Vincent's phone rang again. He answered with barely concealed irritation. What now? Lena couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but she watched Vincent's expression change from annoyance to alarm. What do you mean the feds are moving early? They're not supposed to raid until... He stopped. How long do I have? He started grabbing files, shoving them into a bag with frantic energy. Everyone out! Now! We're compromised! The two guards who'd been standing near the door immediately moved toward the exit. Vincent was right behind them, his focus entirely on escape. Now, Victor said. They stepped into the room, blocking the doorway. Vincent froze, his eyes going wide with recognition. Kane. His voice was flat. I should have killed you when I had the chance. You mean when Robert tried and failed? Victor's smile was cold. You backed the wrong partner, Vincent. Robert's in federal custody, your operation is falling apart, and you're about to spend the rest of your life in prison. I don't think so. Vincent pulled a gun from his jacket, but he wasn't aiming at Victor. He was aiming at Lena. Drop whatever recording device you're holding, or your pretty wife dies. Victor's expression didn't change, but Lena felt the shift in his posture, the coiled tension of a predator ready to strike. You're not going to shoot her. Why wouldn't I? Because the moment you pull that trigger, I'll kill you before your finger leaves the trigger guard. Victor's voice was perfectly calm. And then the federal team that's currently surrounding this building will storm in and find your corpse next to all the evidence of your trafficking operation. Your legacy will be a cautionary tale about human garbage who died badly. Vincent's hand trembled slightly. The feds aren't here yet. I have time. You have 30 seconds. Victor pulled out his own phone, showing the screen to Vincent. It displayed a live feed of federal vehicles surrounding the warehouse. They've been in position for the past 10 minutes. I've been stalling because I wanted to see your face when you realized you'd lost. This is a setup. Vincent's eyes darted between them. You called them early. You planned this. Of course I did. Victor took a step forward. Did you really think I'd let you threaten Marcus Carter and walk away? That boy survived 3 years of hell in your partner's facility. He's been through more trauma than you could comprehend, and you wanted to kill him to protect yourself. His voice went quiet and deadly. That was a mistake. He's a witness. He's a survivor. Lena spoke for the first time, her voice steady despite the gun pointed at her chest. And he's going to testify against everyone involved in what happened to him, including you, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Vincent's finger tightened on the trigger. Several things happened simultaneously. Victor lunged forward, faster than Lena had ever seen him move. His hand caught Vincent's wrist, forcing the gun upward just as it fired. The bullet went into the ceiling, showering them with plaster. Victor twisted, and there was a sickening crack as Vincent's wrist broke. The gun clattered to the floor. Federal agents burst through every entrance, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Vincent went down hard, face first onto the concrete, with 3 agents on top of him within seconds. Clear, someone shouted. Suspect in custody. Lena sagged against the wall, her legs suddenly unsteady. Victor was at her side immediately, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes scanning her for injury. Are you hurt? He demanded. No, She couldn't finish the sentence. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving her shaking and cold. Is it over? Is he really? He's in custody. Victor pulled her into his arms, and Lena let herself lean into the embrace just for a moment. It's over. Vincent's going to prison. The trafficking network is finished. Marcus is safe. A federal agent approached, the same one Lena had spoken to on the phone earlier. Mr. Kane, Mrs. Kane, we need statements from both of you. But first, excellent work. The video evidence you captured is going to make prosecuting Costa significantly easier. There's more evidence on those computers, Victor said, gesturing to the equipment. Files on victims, financial records, communication logs with other traffickers. It's all there. We'll seize everything. The agent turned to Lena. Mrs. Kane, I understand your brother is a survivor of Costa's trafficking network. We'll need his testimony eventually, but there's no rush. He can take all the time he needs to recover. Thank you, Lena managed. The next hours blurred together. Statements given at the federal building. Calls to Marcus, who cried with relief when Lena told him Vincent was in custody. Coordination with prosecutors who were building cases against not just Vincent, but everyone in his network. By the time they made it back to the mansion, dawn was breaking over the city. Marcus was waiting in the entrance hall, James and Margaret flanking him like protective parents. The moment Lena walked through the door, he crossed the space and pulled her into a crushing hug. "You're okay," he whispered. "You're both okay." "We're fine." Lena held him tight, feeling the trembling in his shoulders. "It's over, Marcus. Vincent's in prison. He can't hurt you anymore." "Are you sure? Because last time everyone said it was over, and then—" "This time is different." Victor's voice was firm. "This time, we have him on federal charges with overwhelming evidence. He's not making bail. He's not disappearing. He's going to spend the rest of his life in a cage where he can't hurt anyone." Marcus pulled back, looking between them. "The nightmares won't stop just because he's locked up." "I know." Lena kept her hands on his shoulders. "Recovery is going to take time. Dr. Richardson said that. But at least now you can heal without looking over your shoulder, without wondering if someone's coming for you." "What about the trial, when they make me testify?" "We'll be there." Victor's tone was matter of fact. "Every day, every session. You won't be alone in that courtroom." Marcus nodded slowly, then looked at Victor with an expression Lena couldn't quite read. "You kept your promise. You said you'd find me and keep me safe. You did both." "I keep my promises." Victor's smile was slight, but genuine. "Always." The weeks following Vincent's arrest brought a different kind of chaos. The trials began, first Robert's, then Thomas's, then a parade of territory managers and conspirators who'd carved up Victor's empire. Victor testified for days, providing evidence that dismantled operations spanning decades. His immunity deal held, but the testimony was exhausting, forcing him to relive years of violence and betrayal. Lena attended every session, sitting in the gallery where Victor could see her. It was a small thing, but she could see how it steadied him, having someone there who knew the whole truth, who'd been part of bringing these people to justice. Marcus's testimony came 6 weeks after Vincent's arrest. Dr. Richardson had worked with him extensively to prepare, teaching him coping mechanisms for when the memories became overwhelming. Lena sat in the front row, holding his hand until the moment he had to take the stand. Watching her brother recount 3 years of captivity was the hardest thing Lena had ever done. She heard details he'd never shared, saw pain on his face that broke her heart. But she also saw his strength, the way he refused to let the defense attorneys intimidate him, the way he looked directly at Vincent Costa and described exactly what had been done to him. When it was over, when Marcus stepped down from the stand, Lena pulled him into her arms and didn't let go for a long time. "I did it," Marcus whispered. "I told them everything." "You were incredible," and Lena's voice was thick with emotion. "So brave." "I just want it to be over." "It will be soon," Victor spoke from behind them. "The prosecution's case is airtight. Vincent's going away forever. So is Robert. So are all of them." The verdicts came in rapid succession over the following weeks. Robert Castellano, guilty on all counts, including attempted murder and racketeering, sentenced to life without parole. Thomas Marino, guilty, 35 years. Vincent Costa, guilty on human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, and a dozen other charges. Multiple life sentences to be served consecutively. One by one, the men who'd betrayed Victor and hurt Marcus were locked away permanently. Catherine Castellano's trial was different. She'd cooperated fully with prosecutors, providing evidence that helped dismantle the trafficking network's financial infrastructure. In exchange, her sentence was reduced to 5 years with possibility of parole. At her sentencing, she looked across the courtroom at Lena and mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Lena didn't respond. Catherine had helped, yes, but she'd also been complicit in Robert's empire for years. Some debts couldn't be fully repaid. 6 months after Vincent's arrest, Lena woke to the smell of pancakes and Marcus's laughter floating up from the kitchen. She pulled on a robe and wandered downstairs, following the sound. Marcus stood at the stove, flipping pancakes while Margaret supervised and offered suggestions. Victor sat at the kitchen table reading the newspaper, a cup of coffee in hand. It was so beautifully, perfectly normal that Lena had to pause in the doorway to take it in. "Finally awake," Marcus teased when he spotted her. "I was starting to think you'd sleep all day." "It's 8 in the morning." "Exactly. Half the day's gone." He slid a perfect pancake onto a plate. "Blueberry or chocolate chip?" "Blueberry." Lena accepted the coffee Victor poured for her. "When did you learn to cook?" "Margaret's been teaching me. Turns out I'm pretty good at it." Marcus's smile was the most genuine she'd seen in months. "Dr. Richardson says having a hobby helps with the recovery. Something to focus on that's not trauma." "How are the sessions going?" Lena asked carefully. "Better." Marcus flipped another pancake. "I'm sleeping more. The nightmares are less frequent. I'm even thinking about maybe taking some online classes, community college stuff, just to see if I can handle it." Pride swelled in Lena's chest. "That's amazing, Marcus. It's scary." His smile faltered slightly. "But Dr. Richardson says doing scary things is how you prove to yourself that you're healing." Victor set down his newspaper. "For what it's worth, I think you're ready. You've worked hard these past months. You deserve to move forward." "Thanks." Marcus brought plates to the table, loaded with pancakes and fresh fruit. "So, I've been thinking about what happens next. For all of us." Lena and Victor exchanged glances. This conversation had been building for weeks. What they were to each other now that the immediate danger had passed, now that the trials were over and life was settling into something almost resembling normal. "I'm listening," Lena said. Marcus sat down, suddenly serious. "Lena, you married Victor to save me. That was the deal, right? Help him take down the traitors, and he'd find me." "That's how it started, yes. But it's been 6 months since I came home. The trials are done. Victor kept his promise." Marcus looked between them. "So what happens now? Do you get divorced? Do you stay married out of obligation? What?" Lena opened her mouth, then closed it. She honestly didn't know how to answer. The marriage had started as a transaction, evolved into a partnership, and somewhere along the way had become something she couldn't quite name. She and Victor worked well together. They understood each other. And if she was honest with herself, she'd come to care about him in ways that terrified her. "That's complicated," she said finally. "It doesn't have to be." Victor's voice was quiet. "Lena, I offered you freedom once before. I'm offering it again. If you want to leave, take Marcus and start fresh somewhere. I won't stop you. You've earned that choice." "And if I don't want to leave?" Victor met her eyes, and Lena saw something vulnerable there, something she'd never seen before. "Then I'd like you to stay. Not out of obligation or debt, but because you want to." "Why?" The question came out softer than intended. "Because over the past 6 months, you've become important to me." Victor's expression was careful, guarded. "You're smart. You're brave. You see the world clearly without illusions. You make me want to be better than I was. And yes, I care about Marcus, but—" He paused. "I care about you too, Lena, more than I expected to." Marcus grinned. "Finally. I was starting to think you two were never going to have this conversation." "You knew?" Lena stared at her brother. "Of course I knew. I've been watching you two circle each other for months. The way you look at him when he's not paying attention, the way he hovers whenever you're potentially in danger. It's obvious." We're not," Lena stopped, because denying it felt ridiculous. "I don't know what we are." "Then figure it out." Marcus stood, clearing his plate. "I'm going to my therapy session. You two talk. Be honest with each other for once." He paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Lena, I think you should stay. Not for me. I'm going to be fine eventually. But because I've never seen you this happy. Even when everything was falling apart, you had purpose here. You had partnership. That matters." He left, and suddenly the kitchen felt much smaller with just Lena and Victor sitting across from each other. "He's perceptive," Victor said. "He always has been." Lena traced the rim of her coffee cup. "Victor, I don't know how to do this. How to separate what we were from what we might be. How to know if what I feel is real or just trauma bonding or Stockholm Syndrome or—" "It's not Stockholm Syndrome." Victor's voice was firm. "You had choices from the beginning. You could have taken the money and run. Could have left after we found Marcus. You stayed because you wanted to. I stayed because it made sense, because we worked well together. And now? Lena looked at him, really looked. Victor Kane had been a stranger 6 months ago, a broken king in a wheelchair who'd revealed himself to be anything but broken. He'd kept every promise he'd made to her. He'd saved her brother. He'd treated her as an equal when everyone else in his world saw her as property. And somewhere in the partnership, in the shared danger and triumph, she'd fallen for him without meaning to. Now I want to stay, she said quietly. Not because of obligation or convenience, but because when I think about leaving, about taking Marcus and starting over somewhere else, it feels wrong, incomplete. She met his eyes. You've become important to me too, Victor. I'm just scared of what that means. I'm scared too. Victor's admission came with a slight smile. I spent 3 years pretending to be helpless. Before that, I spent decades building walls to keep people at a distance. Letting someone in, really in, is terrifying. So what do? We take it one day at a time. Victor reached across the table, his hand covering hers. We stop pretending this is just business. We see where this goes without expectations or pressure. And we're honest with each other about what we want. What do you want? I want to build something legitimate, something I can be proud of instead of ashamed of. I want Marcus to recover fully and have the life he deserves. Victor's thumb traced circles on her palm. And I want you beside me while I do it, as my partner, my wife, whatever form that takes. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. I want that too. Then we'll make it work. Victor smiled, genuine and warm. No more pretending, no more acts, just us, figuring out what comes next. The conversation opened something between them that had been building for months. Over the following weeks, they started over in small ways. Actual dates instead of strategy sessions. Conversations about hopes instead of just plans. Moments of vulnerability that had nothing to do with survival. Marcus thrived in this stability. He enrolled in online classes and discovered a passion for psychology, saying he wanted to understand trauma so he could help other survivors. Dr. Richardson said his progress was remarkable, that his resilience was a testament to both his own strength and the support system around him. Victor transformed his remaining resources into legitimate businesses, a security consulting firm that helped other survivors protect themselves, investments in companies focused on victim advocacy and anti-trafficking initiatives. He testified before Congress about the gaps in the system that allowed people like Robert and Vincent to operate. And slowly, painfully, he rebuilt a reputation based on redemption instead of fear. 1 year after Marcus came home, Lena stood in the garden where she'd first seen Victor pretending to be paralyzed. The wheelchair was gone now, replaced by flowers Margaret had planted. It was evening, golden light filtering through the trees, and the air smelled of summer. You look contemplative, Victor said, coming up behind her. Just thinking about how much has changed. Lena leaned back against him. A year ago, I was being sold to pay my father's debts. Now I'm here. Marcus is healthy. You're free. It feels almost impossible. We made it possible. Victor's arms wrapped around her waist. You could have run a dozen times. You chose to stay and fight instead. We fought together. Lena turned to face him. That made all the difference. Marcus appeared on the terrace, waving. Dinner's ready. And before you ask, yes, I made it myself. Margaret only supervised minimally. They walked back to the house together, the three of them, and Lena marveled at how something that had started with violence and desperation had transformed into this: family, healing, hope. I got my acceptance letter today, Marcus announced over dinner. Columbia wants me for their psychology program. Full scholarship. Marcus, that's incredible. Lena's eyes filled with tears. I'm so proud of you. I'm terrified, he admitted. Going to an actual campus, being around that many people, but Dr. Richardson thinks I'm ready, and I want to try. You'll be amazing. Victor raised his glass. To new beginnings. They toasted, and Lena felt the last piece of fear dissolve. Marcus was going to be okay. Better than okay. He was going to thrive. Later that night, after Marcus had gone to bed, Lena and Victor sat on the terrace under the stars. "I've been thinking," Victor said, "about what comes next for us. We've built a life here. What more is there?" "Marriage." Victor pulled out a small box from his pocket. "A real one, this time. Not a transaction or a tactical alliance, but a choice we both make freely." He opened the box, revealing a simple ring, elegant without being ostentatious, exactly Lena's style. "We're already married," she pointed out, her heart racing. "Legally, yes, but that was done under duress, witnessed by people who are now in prison." Victor took her hand. "I want to do it again, properly, with Marcus there and Margaret and people who actually care about us. I want vows that mean something beyond survival." "Victor Kane, are you proposing to your own wife?" "I'm proposing that we renew our commitment to each other, that we choose this marriage instead of being forced into it." His eyes were serious. "What do you say, Lena? Will you marry me again?" Lena thought about the girl who'd been sold to pay her father's debts, who'd walked into this mansion expecting nothing but suffering. She thought about the partnership they'd built, the trust they'd earned, the love that had grown in the spaces between danger and triumph. "Yes," she said simply, "let's do it right this time." The ceremony took place 3 months later in the garden, small and intimate with only the people who mattered. Marcus walked Lena down the makeshift aisle, beaming with pride. Margaret cried. James smiled. And Victor, standing at the altar in the same spot where he'd once sat in a wheelchair pretending to be broken, looked at Lena like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. The vows they wrote to themselves were honest and raw, speaking to partnership and choice, and building something better from the ashes of what had been. When Victor slipped the ring onto Lena's finger, the same one he'd offered that night on the terrace, it felt like a promise being kept, like everything they'd survived had led to this moment. "I love you," Victor said simply. "Not because of what we've been through, but because of who you are. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I'm honored to spend my life beside you." "I love you too," Lena replied, her voice steady. "You gave me back my brother. You gave me purpose when I had none. You saw me as an equal when everyone else saw property, and you taught me that choosing to stay can be just as brave as choosing to run." They kissed while their tiny gathering applauded, and Lena felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She wasn't Lena Carter from Queens anymore, sold to erase a debt. She was Lena Kane, partner and wife and survivor, who'd helped dismantle a criminal empire and saved her brother and found love in the most unexpected place. 5 years later, Lena stood in the same garden, watching Marcus graduate from Columbia with honors. He'd become an advocate for trafficking survivors, working with the very organizations Victor had helped fund. His thesis on trauma recovery had been published and was being used in therapeutic practices across the country. "He's come so far," Victor murmured, his arm around Lena's waist. "We all have." Lena watched her brother accept his diploma, his smile bright and genuine. "Sometimes I still can't believe we made it here." "Believe it." Victor kissed her temple. "We fought for this. All of it." Their daughter, 2 years old, with Victor's dark hair and Lena's eyes, tugged at Lena's hand. "Mama, when's Uncle Marcus done talking?" "Soon, sweetheart." Lena picked her up. "He's just very proud." After the ceremony, they gathered for dinner at the mansion. Marcus brought his girlfriend, a fellow psychology student who understood his past without being defined by it. Margaret served a feast, beaming like the proud grandmother she'd become. James regaled them with stories about the security firm's latest contract, and Lena sat at the table surrounded by the family she'd built from nothing, feeling more content than she'd ever imagined possible. "I have an announcement," Marcus said during dessert. "I got a job offer. The Soderbergh Foundation wants me to direct their new survivor support program. It's a huge opportunity, but it means relocating to Boston." Lena's chest tightened. "That's wonderful, Marcus. You don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt." Marcus smiled gently. "I know we've been in the same city this whole time. But Lena, you saved my life. You gave me the space to heal. Now it's time for me to use what I've learned to help other people. You understand that, right?" "Of course I do." Lena's voice was thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you. I'll miss you." "Boston's 3 hours away. I'll visit constantly. You're not getting rid of me that easily. Marcus stood and pulled her into a hug. You gave me my life back, Lena. Now I'm going to pay that forward, just like you and Victor have been doing with all your advocacy work. He's right, Victor said quietly. We've built something here, a foundation for survivors, support networks, legislation that actually protects people. Marcus is taking that work to the next level. We should celebrate that. They toasted Marcus's new position, and Lena felt pride overwhelm the sadness. Her baby brother had survived hell and emerged stronger, ready to help others do the same. That was everything she'd hoped for, and more. That night, after everyone had gone and their daughter was asleep, Lena and Victor stood on the terrace where they'd renewed their vows 5 years earlier. Do you ever regret it? Victor asked. Staying when you could have left? Never. Lena leaned into him. You gave me everything that matters, my brother, a purpose, a family, love that I chose instead of something forced on me. I was terrified when I offered you that first choice. Victor's arms tightened around her. Terrified you'd take the money and run. Terrified I'd never see you again. I was terrified too, of trusting you, of believing you'd actually help me find Marcus. Lena smiled. But you kept every promise. You showed me what partnership really means. We showed each other. Victor turned her to face him. I was a broken king playing dead, planning revenge, becoming the monster I'd spent my life fighting against. You reminded me there was another way, that I could choose redemption instead of just destruction. You would have found that path anyway. Maybe. But it would have taken longer and cost more. He kissed her softly. Thank you, Lena. For staying. For fighting beside me. For building this life with me. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else just saw a transaction. Lena kissed him back. For making me your partner instead of your property. For keeping your promises even when it cost you everything. They stood together in the darkness, two people who'd been sold and broken and had chosen to rebuild themselves into something stronger. The empire Victor had built on fear was gone, replaced by something better. A legacy of protection and advocacy and second chances. And Lena, who'd walked into a marriage expecting only survival, had found so much more. She'd found her brother. She'd found purpose. She'd found love that she'd chosen freely, built on trust and partnership and the knowledge that they'd survived the worst together and emerged on the other side. The broken king had stood up. The sold bride had become a queen. And together, they'd built something that would outlast them both. A foundation of hope for people who thought they had none. Proof that survival was just the beginning and that healing was always possible. Marcus was safe and thriving. Victor's empire had transformed from criminal enterprise to force for good, and Lena had gone from invisible girl in Queens to woman who'd helped dismantle a trafficking network and changed countless lives. It wasn't the ending she'd expected when she walked into that warehouse to be sold. It was so much better. Years later, when people asked how they'd met, Lena and Victor would exchange knowing glances and give the simplified version. A marriage that started as business and became love. They'd leave out the wheelchair, the pretense, the 3 years of planning revenge. They'd skip over the human trafficking, the federal raids, the night Lena had a gun pointed at her chest. But privately, between them, they'd remember every detail. The first night Victor stood up and offered her a choice, the moment they found Marcus alive. The partnership that had started in desperation and evolved into devotion. The vows renewed freely instead of forced. They'd remember that empires built on violence always fall, but foundations built on choice and partnership can last forever. That revenge is hollow without redemption. That survival is just the first step toward actually living. And they'd look at the life they'd built. Their daughter, their work helping survivors, Marcus thriving in Boston, Margaret still running the household with quiet competence, and know that every choice they'd made, every risk they'd taken, had led them exactly where they needed to be. Together. Free. And finally, genuinely, perfectly home.